It is one of the big questions following the midterms and that violent attack on Pelosi's husband last month. NewsNation D.C. Bureau Chief Mike Vaquera is joining us live ahead of the announcement this morning. Mike, I know that this will be happening on the House floor. Give us a sense on the timing and the significance of this announcement, whatever it is that she will say.
And that's just it. We don't know what Nancy Pelosi is going to say. Top operational security here around the speaker this morning. And she still is the speaker. Remember, even after the election where we declared just the other night, the night before last, the Decision Desk HQ called the House of Representatives as a Republican majority by the slimmest of margin. What does that mean? That means come January 3rd, Nancy Pelosi will no longer be the Speaker of the House. Now, the options available to her, Marni, as you outlined, she can stay on in Congress representing San Francisco as she has done since 1987 for the past 35 years. She was reelected, of course, as she is every 2 years, along with every member of the House, just on November 8th earlier this month. Or she could opt to try to stay on as what would be the minority leader, Democrats being in a minority in the next Congress. Remember, there was a time when she lost the speakership once before, and she is the first person in more than 60 years to lose the speakership and then regain it. You remember back in 2010, after being speaker for 4 years, Republicans swept into the majority. Nancy Pelosi was expected to step down then. She said no. She became the minority leader again. Now it's 12 years later. She is 82 years old. What will she do? Nobody really knows at this point. She could simply step down and not stand for re-election within the Democratic caucus. This is an internal vote to see who would be minority leader. Or she could decide to step aside and remain as a member of Congress representing San Francisco, or she could retire from Congress altogether. I tend to think that's the less likely option, seeing as though she was just elected by her constituents in San Francisco. So what we're seeing now is the House of Representatives getting ready to open for the day. It's 10 o'clock here in the East. We have the Pledge of Allegiance. We have the prayer from the chaplain, typical of every day that the House is in session. And then we expect Nancy Pelosi, the 52nd Speaker of the United States House, to take to the well of Congress and let us know what her plans are, Marni.
Well, and Mike, I mean, all we can do at this point is speculate. And as we wait for this announcement, that's what we will do. But she has dropped some hints. I mean, one, the attack on her husband, she said would weigh on her decision as to whether or not she would continue in a leadership role. And then we had former President Trump's big announcement this week. It is no secret that those two don't agree on much of anything. How those things could play into her decision and announcement today.
You know, Marni, that's a great question. I think you could argue it both ways. I think the attack on her husband at their home in San Francisco could strengthen her resolve as much as anything else and make her go the opposite direction. And having covered Nancy Pelosi for a very long time through both of her speakerships and prior to that, I tend to think, judging by her character, but judging by her past actions, judging by her, the personality and the way she conducts herself generally, I would say that's the more likely option, that she would become more combative in the face of these challenges. You talk about Donald Trump. Remember, famously at a State of the Union, at the end of the State of the Union, customarily the speech is handed, a hard copy of the speech is handed to both the Vice President and the Speaker, who sit behind the President during the speech. And at the end of the speech, ripped up the speech very theatrically, something that was a shocking break in decorum and precedent. And there was that meeting in the Oval Office where they released a photo of her standing up in the cabinet room and challenging the president face to face. Makes her a hero in the eyes of many Democrats, many progressives. Nancy Pelosi, you love her or hate her. There isn't a lot of middle ground here. I don't think you can argue she's anything, however, other than an historic figure, simply by virtue of the fact that, as she said, she broke not the glass ceiling, but the marble ceiling in becoming the first female Speaker of the House, Marni.
Right. So the 52nd Speaker of the House, first woman to be elected Speaker in 2007, 19 years in that leadership role. But the question, I think, remains, Democrats will have a difficult time with such a narrow win for Republicans to get things done in the Senate. In the House, losing control of that chamber will be even harder for Democrats. And so who do they look to for a leader at this point? Is really the question that remains. How is she seen by and large by Democrats, not just for her historic leadership, but getting things done, trying to bring people together, not just her fellow Democrats, but Republicans in the House?
She's revered. I mean, let's make no bones about it. I mean, there are malcontents, particularly those in the middle. And you remember just about a month ago during the campaign, she was asked, well, what about all these people that say they're not going to vote for you for speaker or for leader if, in fact, they win? You know, people running in swing districts where Nancy Pelosi isn't necessarily popular. She said they can say whatever they want to do. They can say whatever they want to say if it helps them to get elected. And that's the practical sort of real politics, hardcore politics that Nancy Pelosi has practiced over the course of her tenure. Look, she helped pass the Affordable Care Act, known as Obamacare, and during the first 2 years of President Obama's term. That cost Democrats majority in the House of Representatives. Many of them think it was worth it. She's helped shepherd in the first 2 years of the Biden administration much of his legislation, some of the COVID stimulus acts, the American Rescue Plan, the Inflation Reduction Act, as the administration calls it, helped shepherd those things through Congress. Look, she is an historic figure. She is revered for her ability to play that inside game in Congress. You know, you talk about running for national office, running for president, running for even senator in a statewide office or governor. It's a different skill set than a leader in Congress has. This is the inside game, cajoling, arm twisting, rewarding when it comes time comes to reward, punishing when the time comes to punish, carrot and stick. She has played that game almost to perfection. She hasn't gotten everything she wanted, but you talk about a narrow majority. She at times has had as little as a 3-seat majority in the House in the last 2 years, and she has gotten a lot of things done for President Biden through the House of Representatives with a straight majority with no Republican help at all. Republicans staunchly opposed to the Biden agenda, of course, staunchly opposed to Nancy Pelosi's policies and tactics, I might add, in the House of Representatives. And so she has managed to get these things through against a restive progressive caucus on her left. Remember, she represents San Francisco. She's not exactly a moderate herself, and she's had a history of progressive policies, trying to reunite or bring together, find a consensus among the warring factions in the Democratic Party, and she's largely done so. So she has been an effective leader. She's revered among Democrats, of course, and reviled among Republicans, Marni.
Well, Mike, let me ask you this, because if she does step aside, a lot of changes will start to be put into motion. How does that impact an investigation into January 6th?
Well, the January 6th investigation is going to go away, at least as far as Congress is concerned, and now all eyes are going to be on the Department of Justice to see how they handle it, and the courts and the various what's happening there. You know, January 6th was something that, for people who have covered Congress a long time, and that includes staff members and even, dare I say it, members of the press, was a startling and disturbing moment, and the Hill is really still recovering to that as a community. But I want to go back to Nancy Pelosi and, you know, sort of her pedigree, if you will, as a politician. Here's an individual whose father was the mayor of Baltimore. She grew up in Baltimore's Little Italy. Her brother ended up being the mayor of Baltimore. And before her father was the mayor of Baltimore, he was a member of Congress himself here representing Baltimore in the United States House. She tells the story of how there was a favor jar in the parlor of her row house in Baltimore on Albemarle Street in Little Italy. People would come in and drop in little notes asking for favors from her father, the mayor, and that's how she learned politics, literally at the knee of her father. She went to school here in Washington at Trinity University. She met her husband, Paul, who was a student at Georgetown. They moved to California. She raised 5 children. When she decided to get into politics, ran for the chairmanship of the California Democratic Party. She asked her daughter, what should I do? Should I do this? And she famously, tells this story frequently. Her daughter told her, Mom, get a grip. Run for office. She did. The rest is history. She became a member of Congress from San Francisco in 1987, became famous for defending human rights, particularly in China, famously went to Tiananmen Square after Chinese troops routed the protesters there, unfurled a banner, and then, of course, more recently, fast forward to just earlier this year when she went to Taiwan. So has been a thorn in the side of China for quite some time, but also representing progressive politics. Perhaps the landmark achievement she's had as Speaker, and again, whether you support it or you don't support it, I covered that struggle, that legislative struggle to get the Affordable Care Act passed through Congress to the House of Representatives, known as Obamacare. I mean, every legislative trick in the book, sleight of hand, she ended up getting it done. That probably you could point to as her signature achievement as the Speaker of the House, putting aside all the day-to-day functions and sort of politicking internally that I've already described that any Speaker of the House has to go through. Marni.
All right, Mike. Well, we anticipate this announcement from House Speaker Nancy Pelosi within the hour on the House floor. We'll come back to you as that happens. Mike Vaquera in Washington, D.C. this morning. Mike, thank you. We'll continue to follow that and update as warranted. To Ukraine now.